Chapter 1. Mikhail braced a shoulder against the lodge's pine-framed doorway, counting heartbeats. 22 wolves gathered in the great hall, each pulse a different rhythm, some rabbit-quick with fear, others measured, waiting. The morning sun slanted through high windows, catching dust specks and warming the ancient timbers. A familiar scent lingered beneath the surface, lavender and sage, almost gone now. Gemma. Even after a decade, traces of her remained in the wood itself. Bring him forward. Viktor's command sliced through the silence. His voice carried the weight of centuries, of blood earned and spilled. The Alpha sat upon his raised stone dais, fingers drumming against the carved arm of his chair. Each tap of his silver signet ring against wood echoed like a death knell. Near the dais, Gideon stood with the casual authority of Viktor's first enforcer, his pale green eyes surveying the assembled pack with predatory calm. Unlike the other wolves who watched the proceedings with varying degrees of discomfort, Gideon's attention kept drifting to where Katerina stood, his gaze lingering on her with an intensity that spoke of more than just professional interest in protecting the Alpha's foster daughter. 2 enforcers dragged a younger wolf into the center of the hall. Blood matted the side of his face, evidence of a preliminary punishment before this public spectacle. Mikhail recognized him, Luca, barely 50 years old, still learning the boundaries of pack law. The boy's fear scent soured the air. "Tell them what you did," Viktor said, leaning forward. Luca's throat worked, his words emerging as a rasp. I let a human go." A murmur rippled through the assembled pack. Viktor silenced it with a glance. "Not just any human," Viktor clarified, rising from his seat with fluid grace that belied his 9 centuries. "A trespasser, on our territory, within sight of our cubs." Mikhail forced himself to inhale slowly, filtering the scents. Beneath Luca's terror and Viktor's cold rage lay something else, the metallic tang of a half-truth. The boy trembled, eyes downcast. "He was lost," Luca whispered, "just a hiker who strayed from the marked trail. He didn't see anything." Viktor descended the 3 stone steps with deliberate slowness. "And how, precisely, could you know what he saw?" The silence stretched. Across the hall, Katerina shifted her weight, the leather of her biker jacket creaking. Her dark red hair caught the sunlight, a flame amid shadow. Her green eyes found Mikhail's for the briefest moment, a shared recognition of what was coming. "Answer your Alpha." Viktor stood before the kneeling enforcer now, close enough that his breath stirred the boy's hair. I tracked him," Luca stammered. "Made sure he returned to the human path. He was scared, thought he'd seen a bear." Viktor's hand shot out, fingers tangling in Luca's hair, yanking his head back to expose his throat. "You showed mercy to prey." "Uncle." The word left Mikhail's mouth before he could reconsider, quiet but clear in the hall's perfect acoustics. Viktor's gaze snapped toward him, grey eyes narrowing. For 3 heartbeats, the Alpha's attention fixed on his nephew, assessing the interruption. Then his lips curved into something approximating a smile. "My heir speaks." Viktor released Luca, who slumped forward, gasping. "Come, Mikhail, share your years of wisdom with our young enforcer." A trap, laid with the practice of centuries. Mikhail straightened from the doorway, moving with measured steps into the hall. He felt the pack's collective gaze, the weight of their expectations and fears. Some hoped he would challenge Viktor for his seat. Others dreaded it. All wondered when, not if, the confrontation that had been brewing would come. Not today. Not yet. "The boy made an error in judgment," Mikhail said, his voice level. "One that endangered us all." Viktor's smile widened, a predator satisfied. "Indeed." But he tracked the human to ensure our secret remained intact, Mikhail continued. The pack's safety was his priority, even if his methods were misguided. A muscle twitched in Viktor's jaw. Misguided, he repeated, the word dripping with contempt. Is that what we call weakness now? Mikhail maintained eye contact, though instinct told him to look away, to submit. We call it inexperience. It's something time and proper guidance will correct. He couldn't help but remember a time when Viktor and Gemma had been that safe place for him. Time. Viktor turned back to Luca, who remained on his knees, blood dripping onto the flagstones. Time is a luxury afforded to those who don't endanger the pack. Interacting with humans is what killed your aunt, Mikhail. Or have you forgotten? The words struck like physical blows. Across the hall, several wolves lowered their eyes. Gemma's death remained an open wound in the pack's collective memory. Viktor's mate used to partner with a park forest ranger to catch poachers. It had been a strong friendship for more than 5 years, but after the ranger had discovered her transforming on a late-night patrol, he hadn't been able to accept her identity as a supernatural creature. Using their regular morning briefing as cover, Gemma had been led to a section of forest where hunters had set up a crossfire with silver ammunition. She'd never had a chance. I haven't forgotten, Mikhail said quietly. Good. Viktor rose from his throne and approached the young wolf. His hand moved with blinding speed. Claws extended, he raked them across Luca's face. Fresh blood sprayed across the stone floor, the scent of it sharp and copper-bright. The young enforcer cried out, then bit back the sound, curling in on himself. Mercy feeds the enemy, Viktor proclaimed, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. His signet ring left a silver burn where it had contacted Luca's skin. Hesitation invites death. This is the law of our pack. A low growl emanated from where Katerina stood. Not quite challenge, not quite submission, a sound that walked the knife's edge between. Viktor's head snapped toward her, nostrils flaring. You disagree, Katerina? The alpha's voice carried a dangerous purr. Mikhail caught her eye and made a subtle shake of his head. Not here. Not now. For a moment, he thought she would ignore him. Katerina had never been one to back down, even when wisdom demanded it. As cubs, Mikhail had pulled her out of more than a few scrapes. Katerina's fingers curled at her sides, nails lengthening into points. I wonder, Alpha, she said, each word precise, her Rus accent thickening with emotion. If this lesson needed quite so much blood to teach. The hall went utterly still. Mikhail caught the subtle shift in Gideon's posture from the corner of his eye, a tightening of his jaw, a possessive glint that transformed his expression. The first enforcer wasn't seeing Katerina's words as defiance against their alpha, but as something else entirely. There was hunger in that look, a desire to claim the fire in her voice for himself, rather than see it wasted on mercy for the weak. Viktor's eyes gleamed with something between amusement and rage, a predator deciding whether to toy with his prey or end it quickly. Mikhail moved, deliberately drawing the alpha's attention back to himself. The pack understands your point, Uncle. He gestured to the assembled wolves, their faces masks of appropriate fear and respect. None will forget what happens to those who show trust in humans. Viktor studied him for a long moment, then glanced back at Katerina, whose defiance simmered just beneath the surface. The tension stretched until it seemed the very air might snap. Finally, the alpha straightened, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt where blood had spattered the fine fabric. See that they don't. He turned to the enforcers who had brought Luca in. Take him to the infirmary. When he heals, he'll spend 3 months on the northern border. Perhaps the cold will sharpen his instincts. Relief whispered through the hall, a collective exhale. The punishment, while harsh, could have been far worse. Luca would live, would have a chance to redeem himself. Viktor returned to his dais, settling into his chair with the casual grace of absolute power. The assembly is concluded. Patrols will depart as scheduled. The pack dispersed with the efficiency of long practice, none lingering longer than necessary. Mikhail remained where he stood, aware of Katerina's gaze burning into his back. She would be furious with him for the intervention, for his silent warning to stand down. But she was alive, and that was what mattered. As the hall emptied, Viktor beckoned him forward. "Walk with me, nephew." It was not a request. Mikhail inclined his head in acknowledgement and followed the Alpha through a side door that led to a private corridor. The scent of pine sap grew stronger here, mixed with older, mustier odours, books, leather, the lingering traces of pack members long dead. They entered Viktor's study, a room Mikhail had known since childhood. Once, it had been a place of learning, of stories told by firelight. Now it felt like a tomb, preserving memories that should have been allowed to rest. Viktor moved to the window, gazing out at the forest that surrounded the lodge. Sunlight caught in his long, silver-streaked hair, lending him a momentary halo. An illusion, like so much about him these days. "You undermined me today," the Alpha said without turning. Mikhail kept his voice neutral. "I supported your decision while preventing unnecessary escalation. We need young fighters like Luca to remain strong." His uncle snorted. "Katerina needs to learn her place." "Katerina is one of our strongest she-wolves. The pack respects her." Viktor turned then, his grey eyes cold. "The pack fears her temper, as they should fear all of us. Fear is what keeps order, Mikhail. Fear is what keeps us alive." "Is it?" Mikhail moved to the large desk that dominated the room's centre, running his fingers over the scarred wood. How many decisions had been made here? How many lives determined? Gemma never ruled through fear. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Viktor went utterly still. "Do not speak of her to me." "You speak of her," Mikhail countered, meeting his uncle's gaze. "You invoke her death whenever it suits your purpose. Because the pack must remember." Viktor's control slipped, his voice rising. "They must never forget what happens when we trust humans, when we lower our guard for even a moment." Mikhail heard the grief beneath the rage, the wound that had never healed. For a moment, he glimpsed the uncle who had raised him, who had taught him to hunt and fight and lead. The man Gemma had loved with fierce devotion. That man was disappearing by inches, consumed by bitterness and hate. "She wouldn't want this," Mikhail said quietly. "The blood, the fear. This isn't what she died for." Viktor's laugh held no humour. "You presume to know what my mate wanted. You were a child when I brought you here, orphaned and half wild. We gave you everything, and now you stand in judgment of me." The accusation stung because it carried truth. Viktor and Gemma had saved him, raised him as their own when his parents were killed by another pack. That debt could never be repaid, but neither could it justify what Viktor was becoming. "I'm not judging," Mikhail said. "I'm remembering. The lodge used to smell of her, sage and lavender. Now all I smell is blood and fear." Viktor turned away, his shoulders rigid. "The world has changed. We must change with it, or perish." "Change into what?" Mikhail asked. "What are we becoming, Uncle? And is it worth it?" The Alpha didn't answer. He stood framed against the window, sunlight streaming around him, creating a silhouette both familiar and increasingly strange. Mikhail noticed a tremor in Viktor's hand, but when he finally spoke, his voice had regained its cold control. "You will patrol the far western border tonight. Take Katerina with you. Perhaps the long run will cool her temper." A dismissal and a test. Mikhail recognized both. "As you wish." He left the study, closing the heavy door behind him. The corridor stretched before him, shadows gathering in its corners despite the morning light. At its end, a figure waited, scarlet hair gleaming like a brand. Katerina pushed off from the wall as he approached, her green eyes sharp with accusation. "You stopped me. He would have hurt you." He rubbed the growing ache in his neck. "Or worse." "I don't need your protection, Mikhail." Her accent thickened with anger, consonants sharp as knives. "What we need is for someone to stand up to him before he destroys everything." Mikhail glanced back toward the study door. Not like that. Not yet. Then when? She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the wild pine needle scent of her. "How many more will bleed while you wait for the perfect moment?" The question pierced deeper than she knew. Mikhail had asked himself the same thing countless times, lying awake in the dark. How much blood would stain the flagstones before he acted? How many lives would be damaged or lost? "We're to patrol the western border tonight," he said instead of answering. "Viktor's orders." Katerina's lip curled. "Of course, send the troublemakers away while he terrorizes the rest." "It gives us time to talk, away from too many ears I don't trust." Something shifted in her expression, not softening exactly, but a recognition of strategy. Katerina had never lacked for intelligence, only patience. "Fine, but this can't continue, Mikhail. The pack deserves better." She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist. "Be careful today. Viktor's watching you closely now, and Gideon is just waiting for a chance to enforce the Alpha's displeasure." For a moment, something like fear flickered across her face, there and gone so quickly he might have imagined it. Then her usual defiance reasserted itself. "Let them watch. I have nothing to hide." The lie was so subtle that most wolves would have missed it, a slight acceleration of her pulse, a faint shift in her scent. Mikhail frowned. "Katerina?" "Western border, sunset. I'm going for a ride to clear my head." She pulled free of his grip and strode away, her boots echoing on the stone floor. Mikhail watched her go, unease settling in his gut. If he did not act soon, Katerina would. Her protective instinct for the pack was strong enough that she would challenge Viktor despite the obvious danger. She-wolves did sometimes win challenges against male rivals, but it was unheard of with an alpha as old and strong as Viktor had become with centuries of experience. He turned and walked in the opposite direction, toward the lodge's main entrance. The morning air greeted him, crisp with the promise of autumn. From this vantage point, he could see the forest stretching for miles, the territory their predecessors had claimed centuries ago. A kingdom of sorts, passed down through blood and fang. Above, in the lodge's highest window, a shadow moved. Viktor, watching. Always watching. Mikhail descended the steps, the weight of the morning's events settling across his shoulders. Gemma's memory haunted him, a reminder of what had been lost, what continued to be lost with each passing day. Experience told Mikhail that in his current bad mood, Viktor would draw more blood before nightfall. The only question was whose.